Hello, this is Jamison Murphy, and I am giving my overview for my conceptual interview. I'm looking at my information for my interview. I presented the students in my 6th grade earth science class with a blind observation. The observation started with having students look at a lab setup. The lab setup was a lamp, red dirt, and a cup of water. I took the cup of water and poured over the red dirt and had the lamp positioned over the red dirt. The red dirt was contained in in a bowl, and it represented the Earth's surface. And I asked the students, what do they think would occur in this system with the light, the water, and the red dirt? Students wrote down their observations. Some students said that the water would disappear, that the water would create mud, the water would sink down into the dirt, and maybe like 1 or 2 students said that the water would evaporate. Well, I used this to open up the lesson about the water cycle, which is what the lesson was about. And it opened up the lesson about the water cycle. The students learned what the water cycle is, discussing the various parts of the water cycle, the collection area, the evaporation phase, the condensation phase, and the precipitation phase. Students also learn where the 3% of Earth's fresh water is contained, which is in glaciers. 76% of the 3% of Earth's fresh water is contained in glaciers that we don't have access to as human beings to collect that water from. So it's very important to keep our water. They went over various vocabulary terms dealing with the water cycle, precipitation, condensation, transpiration, and infiltration. Infiltration, of course, is the seepage of groundwater into the Earth's surface, which was also identified in this lab that I had set up. And the importance of the lab was to kind of gauge what students knew based on the hypothesis that they created for the lab, for them to examine what exactly for them to examine the system, not having any prior knowledge, to see where they were in the information or in the information about the water cycle. I gave them a definition of water, showed them a water molecule and the configuration of water molecule. I also tied in gravity into the water cycle because precipitation has to come down. Also, the sun as a source of energy for the water cycle, which causes evaporation. I gave them various diagrams of the water cycle. Let me see, can I flip and show? No, I can't flip on this phone to show you. All right. I need to increase that on my iPhone. Do something about that on my phone. I gave them notes. I gave them uses for water and how we use the water cycle. The water cycle involves the exchange of heat, which leads to temperature changes on our Earth, in our atmosphere. I gave them pictorial representations of what precipitation was. I tied the words rain, hail, snow, and ice to different pictures. Even though snow is common, rain is common, still when you tie the vocabulary, the scientific term precipitation to them, it takes on a different meaning for them, something that's not as tangible for them. So I use pictures of rain and storms to show them that precipitation is what you experience every day. Show them a quick video from the water cycle, about the water cycle from the National Ocean Aquatics Administration that went through the different phases of the water cycle. Some of the questions for the video were, what is the main idea of the video? Does the water cycle create new water or recycle water? And had them to explain one part of the water cycle to better build their understanding of the water cycle. They had a Promethean board activity as well. I went over vocabulary involving the water cycle. And the water cycle task. The water cycle lesson was broken up into 2 parts. I didn't want to cram everything about the water cycle into one lesson. That's a lot of information, and I don't feel that you can really cover great ground academically, cramming a lot of information into one lesson. So it was split up into 2 parts, and I actually had a review after the 2 days of the water cycle. They had a review the following day. Also, let's see, their objective was to review Earth's water cycle, and also I tied in real life events into real life aspects to the lesson, dealing with water conservation. Why is water conservation important? How can students use water conservation in everyday life? How can they create water conservation in their school to get them formulating more hypotheses, thinking outside of just the vocabulary or the information, to think about more and more how to attach or relate the water cycle to their everyday life. Let's see. The students also had a vocabulary game that I used with Quizlet.
Increased security measures are in place at the Mobile Regional Airport
I had to
and may result
pause
in
for a
slight
second, kind of
delays.
like in the airport.
We appreciate your patience and ask that you fully cooperate with law enforcement and security personnel.
Yeah.
The Transportation Security Administration has limited the items that can be carried through the screening checkpoint. Please check with your individual air carrier for further information.
I also had
Attention, please. For your safety and convenience, elevators are located in the public areas. If you are a person with special needs, require a cane or walker.
They also did a word game where I gave them the words runoff, precipitation, water cycle, condensation, sun, fresh water, and salt water. And I had them take those words and use them in a conversation with each other. So the students in their groups had to create dialogue with one another and use those words to create a better working definition, a working vocabulary with the word, to be comfortable using the words, and then also identifying the words in their everyday work. For homework, the students had to create a skit, rap, PowerPoint, or public service announcement about the water cycle. The students could use their notes. They can use the book, they can use the web, they can do like a web find to help them create. They also were able to create a PowerPoint as well. And some of the students created a PowerPoint, some of the students created a rap, and some of the students also drew the water cycle, which is very good because it tapped into the different styles of learning for the students. Also, I had in my classroom, I have students that have learning, I guess you could say, disabilities, or they have learning challenges. And based on the pre-test and based on their performance on the post-test, a lot of them learned, they were increased by my teaching. They learned the concepts, they learned the basic needs. They actually, it's like 6 kids, 4 of them passed, 2 of them didn't, but they came very close to passing. Also, what else? Also, I did kind of short the kids in their lesson, though. I did not teach about photosynthesis, and photosynthesis is one of the questions on the test. So a lot of the students, except for like maybe 5 out of a group of 27, got that question wrong. So I didn't hold that question against them because I did not teach photosynthesis, so I can't hold that against them. But there were a few kids who actually got that question correct based on their prior knowledge, which was great. And one of the students who had a learning disability, he actually got that question correct as well on the test. So that was interesting. But yeah, so I didn't hold that question against them, but they did. The majority, I did not teach that concept about photosynthesis because I realized that photosynthesis really isn't tied into this part of their phase in science. It's more like life science or whatever, so I didn't hold that question against them. Yep, so let's see. yep, it's pretty much about it. There was a significant increase about the concepts, and also I looked at the students' common assessment test that they took after my lesson. I reviewed their questions and their answers, and the areas about the water cycle that I taught them, they got those areas correct. So that was very good as well. Even the students that had learning disabilities. The important goal was for me was to relate the terms and the concepts to them in many different ways, so that if they see a picture, they can relate. If they hear a word, they can relate. If they hear a sound, if they can relate. As a matter of fact, during my entire unit lesson, I played water sounds. I played river sounds. I played storm sounds. I played precipitation sounds, snow sounds. I played waterfall sounds. I played runoff sounds. I played all these different sounds so students can kind of tie themselves to the process of the water cycle, creating a better concept and idea of what water is actually doing, and not this liquid that just makes you wet. I tied it into things for them, so they were stimulated in various different ways about the concept of the water cycle. Yep. Let's see. And I used various pictures. Oh, yeah, I can flip it around. Like, I used that picture there. Let's see, another picture I showed them gravity. That picture there was used for gravity. The sun, I used a picture of the sun. That was used. And of course, a diagram of the water cycle. That was used. So these are things that I used. And each day with the sponge, we used discussions. And also, I learned that with the water cycle, with the lab experiment that I had set up, the students did realize that prior to them not knowing about evaporation and condensation, precipitation, even though it's being something that they come into contact with each and every day of their life, after the lesson, they realized that their hypotheses were incorrect. And they realized that not only does the water seep into the ground, but it also evaporates. A lot of the students were under the misconception that water just disappears. And a lot of students were under the misconception that we recreate water. But in actuality, the world reuses water. It recycles water. So that kind of fell into lines of water conservation as well. So it was a pretty good experience for the students. My high learners, that was like that 5 students who got the photosynthesis corrections correct. They were pretty on par. They were the ones who also realized that evaporation and infiltration occurred in a lab experiment. And then the rest of the class in between were kind of stuck either between the water disappears in the lab experiment or it seeps into the ground, not connecting both processes to the cycle. But for the most part, for them not having any prior information, not giving them any type of lead-ins to the system of the lab, I just told them to examine the lab and tell me, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? And they did pretty well. So, yep. But it was a great experience. And yep, that's it. All right. Thank you. Bye.